Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge from the Crown Plaza Hotel. Now, it is an election year and we're literally months to the general election in August. And we're getting inundated with so many campaign promises from politicians trying to get our vote. But what do you as a voter consider before voting for a candidate? What qualities do you look for? What track record do you look for? Well, I have a panel and an audience ready to dig into this discussion and find out what really goes on in the mind of a voter. Let's meet them now. Wendy Njoya is a lecturer in literature and French at Daystar University, where she also heads the Department of Language and Performing Arts. She's also very passionate about issues governance, politics, and corruption. Vincent Odundo is a 20-year-old student who's also a founding volunteer of Onyesho Kenya Youth Movement, the parent of his current social media-based peace campaign and youth enlightenment initiative Uzalendo, Upendo na Amani Kenya, which engages the youth on discussions on peace and civic responsibilities. Nakia White is the co-founder of Global Ladder Political Management. She is an international political commentator who writes and speaks on global political issues. She is now in Kenya analyzing Kenyan politics. Remember, hashtag Victoria's Lounge is how you can chime into the conversation on social media. We always love to hear from you. Now, let me start with you, Vincent. You are our first-time voter, right? So you'll be voting for the first time this year.
Yeah, sure.
What do you make of the political landscape in terms of the politicians who are really trying to endear you to their side? Are you convinced at all? Do you think they are viable candidates?
So honestly, right now in Kenya, I'm looking at the political scene and I'm saying to myself, like, we don't really deserve this type of leaders actually vying now that we don't have an option. Currently, the situation is, it's a polarized country. We have like a coin. It's either one side or the other. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to look at the third side because neither of the sides is actually viable for me because they're not selling manifestos. They're just selling tribalism. Mm-hmm. Instead of giving us the manifestos early enough, they're forming tribal alliances, which is not really helping in the current situation, being that we are a country trying to heal from 2007. We don't want a repeat of that again.
Right.
So it's something that is really saddening, unfortunate, and it's the reality. So we have to deal with it that way. You know,
when Vincent mentioned something very interesting, he said, we don't deserve these leaders. And a lot of Kenyans feel that way. Like, we don't have many options. What's your take on that?
I agree. There was somebody tweeted about a few months ago, and she asked, she had a poll asking who would you vote for between Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, Peter Kenneth, and Kung Fu Panda.
Oh my God.
And Kung Fu Panda won by 60%.
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
Yes. and for me, I kept that tweet because it reflects how I feel, that there's no candidate worth my vote. And basically what has happened is that it will be a lottery where we are just, putting in your vote and hoping that your candidate wins. But, you can only predict by the numbers, like you're betting on a horse. But, I don't think there'll be much value added for the voter.
Yeah. I mean, Nakia, you're an outsider looking in. And actually, for the first time, the U.S. almost became like Kenya. In terms of the political landscape and the candidates out there, both Hillary and Trump were not very endearing candidates. They weren't as charismatic as Obama was. But what's your take on our political landscape from the outside looking in?
Well, I think, KPMJ voted Kenya as one of the most democratic countries in Africa. I think that's important to know, which means that everyone's votes count. And I think that's always important to remember. And I would have to agree with Wendy is that, it is a lottery, it is a horse race. I think my take is that you have dynasties that are running and dynasties that are connected to name. So I think as long as you have a name, a recognizable name, and money, almost equal to the United States, I think you have a really good chance of winning. Now, whether or not the quality of your candidacy is good or not, I think that's the debatable part. And whether or not you're going to do something for the people, that's another debatable part. So, yeah.
Yeah, let me throw it out to the audience. I mean, what do you make now of the politicians that we see? Are they people that you feel yes, or they're the same old, just a different party? Which a lot of times we'll see that from election year to election year, they'll change and shift political parties, and it's the same individual. But I mean, what do you make of that?
As we've seen before, our leaders are using youths to get power, and then they forget. So I don't think there is a leader right now. The whole regime should go home and and let the youths and leaders who got ideologies who can propel Kenya forward to take over.
Yeah.
So right now what we're having is a fight for power. I don't think we have the best candidate at this point unless God gives us one.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, I mean, it doesn't work that way, but it would be wonderful if it did.
Yeah,
But Vincent, from your peers that you interact with, because we have the leaders that we do have, and that's the choices that we do have, what are they considering? Because you do have to vote, as much as you may not like who you're voting for, but what are they considering?
So most of my peers, I'm at around my 20s now, and most of my peers, they're looking at tribe. Reason, it's because that's how their parents have been tuned to work. So it's so unfortunate, but that's what they're looking at. But on my own step as a member of a youth movement that is championing for peace and actually enlightenment of voter knowledge out there, what I'm looking at right now is, honestly, for a first-time government, I'd look at manifestos.
Yeah.
But for an incumbent, I'd look at their scorecard. What did they promise and what have they delivered so far? So that's how I'd determine the person I'm voting in 2017. And I like my peers to consider the same out there. It's not supposed to be something that you're my guy, so it's guaranteed you'll food. They don't put food on your table. So how are you benefiting from electing the wrong people? They don't put food directly on your table. They can only work as hard as opening new opportunities. If they haven't done that, then no, for me.
Yeah, I mean, and Wendy, it seems like we've been historically conditioned the wrong way. Like you said, you do it based on tribe, or because this candidate happened to give me more money than the other did, and you're not considering anything else beyond those two factors. How do we get past that?
Oh, that's gonna be a long journey, because I think it has to do with our education system.
Yeah.
We removed the subjects that would enable people to think historically, and be able to make decisions and evaluate candidates and even former leaders according to what they did and what it meant for the country in the long term.
Yeah.
Because that's how we should be thinking. If we are really a middle income country, that's where we should be thinking. But we are thinking at the immediate. And I think that's what thinking about tribe is. It's the immediacy. If we get another immediate thing like looks or popularity or celebrity, that's what people will go for. The problem is we are not, I think as Vincent said, we are not really digging deep to see, to think long term and, what are the implications of what these people are saying. Like the Jubilee Manifesto actually predicts what is happening right now with healthcare. So if we really, really looked, we would have seen it. But like he said, we looked at the surface, and right now that's the nature of Kenyan politics. We are not really digging deep to understand what is going on and what it means.
It's interesting, and you mentioned the whole thing of education. When you compare to maybe the American electorate, and you think, they've had so many elections, probably more educated than most Kenyans. But still, it seemed like, they voted on that whole thing of immediacy. Right now, they wanted to get rid of the establishment. And a candidate was that and represented that. I mean, what did you make of the voting this time around from the Americans?
Well, let me just jump back and kind of dovetail off of Wandia's question. And I think, yes, and Vincent's comment as well, is yes, that people have historically voted based on the way that their parents have voted. I think, but the truth, one of the main factors is that the leaders that have been before have really dictated kind of tribalism or put tribalism at the forefront. And I think if you have a leader that says that everyone, no matter what tribe or religion or gender, everyone matters, I think that really will change the tone of the way that people look at the country and look at the way that they vote, right? It really does come from a leader. And I think in the United States, there was a number of issues, one of which was that the Democratic Party really failed to listen to its constituency. They really failed to listen to the people. So a lot of the voters that voted for Donald Trump were formally voting for the Democrats all the way down the line, right? She lost Wyoming. Hillary Clinton lost Wyoming, which had really been a stalwart for the Democratic Party for a number of years, and she lost it.
Right.
And that wasn't because, and she didn't go and visit that state, or nor did her campaign, but it was more about the democratic system not listening to the people. And I think even as it translates into Africa, into Kenya, when you don't listen to the people for which you are hired to serve, then you have an issue, and people will rebel against that. And that's what we saw in the United States. Trump was able to speak to people on the level that the Democrats weren't able to.
You mentioned a very important word, hired. That really is the operative word here when we're voting. We're literally putting them in office to serve us. And a lot of times the electorate seems so disempowered. You know, you vote them in, and then the next 5 years, you're wondering, okay, these basic needs that should be coming to me because I pay taxes and, you know, I'm an honorable citizen are not coming to me. And I'm wondering, and I'm just throwing out to the audience, why is that the case? If we have the power of putting someone in office, and also in the Constitution, there's a provision for us to recall at least members of Parliament, but no one's doing that. So let me just throw it out there. Yes, I can see a hand up.
Want to tail back on the first question.
Sure.
Why people vote the way they are voting in Kenya? I'll take it in two levels. The first level being the presidency. I think we are more comfortable, or people out there will vote based on fear or driven by fear. I want who is like me and not the one who is not like me. But when I look at the county government currently, the distance between the mwananchi and the person who they are voting for has become very shortened. And it's likely that we will see a little bit of a twist where people will start voting based on service, because now it's me and you. It's not me and another 3 people above.
Yeah.
So that is likely to change a little. Coming back to the last question, I think it's interesting. And what I find interesting about the Kenyan people is, once we vote, we take a back seat and we forget that it's our job to keep these people accountable. So once I have voted, I have gotten a leader who I didn't like or who I liked, and for the next 5 years, it doesn't matter that they start campaign the next day, I don't take initiative to actually keep them to account.
Okay, that's a good point. And I know we'll come back to you. We'll take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. We'll now talk about also those who are eligible voters. They're very vocal on social media, but they don't make it to the ballot to make a difference. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. Before we get to our next point, there was an audience member that wanted to make a comment. Go ahead.
I wanted to answer your question about why you think the Kenyans are powerless when their leaders fail to deliver. I think Kenyans are ignorant of the privileges they have. Like, many Kenyans don't know they have the power to challenge their leaders to deliver. The other point is the judicial system is corrupt. A case in point is the Ebu County. We saw the governor was impeached, I think 3 times.
Right.
But then the court said he was not impeached fairly. So like right now is the governor. So the court system is somehow corrupt.
You're right, 3 times. That is sending a message. And do you think people lose hope then if they're thinking the systems that we rely on to do this are not working for us?
Honestly, I'm considering you wouldn't fight a wall. Like, you're spending your money for the court sessions and everything, and then there's nothing happening afterwards.
Right.
You're just coming back to square zero. So people are losing hope out here, and it's up to all the systems of government to get effective and do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
I think that's supposed to be it.
Yeah, and you know, Nakia, we were talking during the break about what could have informed this kind of thinking in Kenyan society, at least.
Well, I mean, one has to question whether or not colonialism played a role in the way that many Kenyans and many Africans, because many Africans were colonialized throughout, the continent, how they look at the system. So if you have colonialists that come in and say, this is the way that it is, and if you don't do it this way, we're going to not give you land or send you to school, or we're going to hurt you in some type of way, there's a sense of apathy. And perhaps that is an apathy that is more generational than anything else. And so when people say, okay, now we have a constitution and we have this piece of paper, and we understand that this piece of paper allows us to vote for our leadership, but then after that, there's a sense of apathy because we really don't have control.
Yeah.
And pointing to the Mbu, I think what you just said
Yeah,
about
the case with the governor.
right, the
Yeah.
case with the governor,
Yeah.
is that that builds on that sense of empathy and that sense of powerlessness. Well, if I do this, then, and I'm fighting the system, and the system that is more powerful than me at this point fights back, then what recourse do I have?
Right.
So I think those are important things that you have to look at the system and how it's working for you or working against you. There are all kinds of things going on around NYS, around AACC, and no one has really been arrested yet. And so you have to call into question, with this administration, how serious are they against corruption?
Yeah.
You have a bunch of millennials in the audience, and all of them basically are saying, we don't believe in this government. We don't believe in either candidate. And I think that that's something for the two presidential candidates that are real serious, that are running, to look at. If millennials, your biggest voter bloc, are saying, we don't believe in you, we don't believe in your voice, we don't believe in your manifesto, that's something to really listen to.
And I wonder if constituents get fed up enough, because in the case of the governor Wambora, who was impeached 3 times, and other governors, it wasn't because the constituents were fed up, it's because the MCAs were fed up. You know, and you're wondering, the regular people, the wananchi, are they mad enough to demand that from their leaders, or do you have to wait for another politician to say, they're not giving us what we wanted, and they're not even doing what they need to for their constituents? Then that's when you see action being taken. I wonder, you know, if that's the case among many constituents. But you wanted to make a comment there in the front.
We have a problem with the system, but who actually forms that system? It's the leaders. So what we need, like he said, it's a whole overhaul of the leaders that we have, and the kind of leaders we need right now are leaders who are actually good people. So we don't need just one person. We have many people who stood and went to parliament, and you know, there's just one voice amongst many. So what we need is a movement of good people who have values, who will just come and just turn everything around for us. And it is very shocking for me to also hear the youth have given up. They're frustrated. They do not want to vote. That is actually a very serious point. And I feel that the leaders who are actually taking positions should take this very seriously, and they should actually listen. Like she was saying, the Democrats, they never listen to the people on the ground. So the leaders need to go to the ground, and they need to be issue-based. We have, you know, political, tribal-based leaders. We need issue-based leaders. We need issue-based political parties. And I think if we have that, and we have a movement of good people who have values, we have values espoused in our national anthem, then I feel that there's hope for Kenya.
Wandia, you know, from her comment about getting a good force into leadership, how feasible is it to have those individuals actually come and be elected? Because again, they're coming up against a system that has operated that the people who are in it like, because it keeps them in. And so how are they able to fight against it and still get voted in by the constituents that they're trying to get their vote?
Well, I've been saying, for example, that we probably need a middle class party where, you know, and we put a cap, on the salaries. If you earn more than 500K, you know, go to CORD or Jubilee or whatever. That's where the rich people are. I mean, seriously, and then decide as the ordinary lecturer, the ordinary student, the ordinary businessman, what are the things that we really need? And for me, in my discussions I'm one of the social media people. In my discussions in social media, what surprises me is not even our apathy, is that we don't believe in ourselves enough. We don't believe we deserve better. So even when you tell people we need a healthcare system where everybody can get treated, people feel, how do I fight for that? I don't deserve it. I need somebody to come and pay my hospital fees. The idea of I can walk into a hospital and not pay anything and get good treatment, it's almost so foreign that we don't believe it. And we have to believe in ourselves as human beings. You know, the Mau Mau didn't fight because they hated the government. It's because they believed they deserved better. Do we believe in ourselves?
Yeah.
Do we believe we deserve better? Do we believe that we don't deserve to have crooks in government? If we really do, it wouldn't even take us 2 seconds to go all congregate outside the governor's office and say, get out.
Right.
We are not even going to go to court. Just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go.
Yeah, and I wonder what does it take to get people that, and it has to do with being that informed. And knowing that you actually are entitled to something better. And a lot of people don't know that. So you're living in squalor, you're living in deplorable conditions because you felt, well, I was born in this, I grew up in this, and this is how it's always been, regardless of who we voted. How do we get people to change their minds and realize I actually deserve better?
I think there are two groups of people who can do this. One is the religious leaders. You know, what are we preaching if we are not telling people that, you know, God loves you? Just that enough should be enough to tell someone, what you're doing, I don't deserve it, I deserve better. Then the education system, I'll go back to that. The education system has to teach our history. It has to teach how people rose and said, this is enough, I'm not taking it. Because we have so many people for the last 2 centuries, from Mekatilili to Koitalel, to the Mau Mau, we have to Wangari Maathai, we have so many people who said, this is enough. How many of the 19-year-olds know? And they are going to vote. How many know what Wangari Maathai did for Karura? Very few. And so if we don't know the examples of people who stood up, we think that this is how it is going to be. And so we also need to start asking about our education system. Who is fixing it the way it's being fixed so that we don't know who we are as a people?
Yeah. Good point. Knowledge is power. Yeah, there's a comment there.
Personally, growing up, I was meant to believe as a youth I don't have the capability to make a decision that might be helpful to the society. That was always left for the elders to do that decision. So we never believed as a youth we can say something that be meaningful to the society. So what if we try to change the aspect in this youth? What if Vincent tells me if I say a point A, it can really help Kenya to grow big? So I think if we do that through the education system, through the religious leader, we'll really make a very big improvement with the youth. Because if I go to a meeting with elders, I'll probably keep quiet because I know what I'll say might not even help that meeting. So if we change that perspective as a youth, I think we'll go forward. Thank you.
Oh, great point there, yeah. And on that note, let's take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. We continue this conversation. I hope you're continuing it on social media, #Victoria's Lounge. We always love to hear from you. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge as we continue the conversation. I was reading something and they brought up a very interesting statistic. It was the Afro Barometer. It said 26% of Kenyans have faith that votes are fairly counted. 26%. That's a little less than a third. You know, and that was a bit worrying. Because now it will probably explain, even when it comes to the lethargic attitude people have towards registering to vote. But that's the attitude that people have now. Vincent, you're going to be a first-time voter. You've registered?
I have registered.
You have registered, very good.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, do you agree with that kind of sentiment that the Kenyans have shown?
So honestly, confidence towards being counted, I'd bring this back to the wars that we've had in the previous regime or in the current regime.
Yeah.
So there was a time when the opposition didn't have confidence in the Electoral Commission, and then the government was defending the Electoral Commission. So it seems like the Electoral Commission was sided by someone. They didn't have a choice in that. It just came by objective that when the opposition opposes, the government has to defend. So I'd like a situation where our system, like the Electoral Commission, it's government proof. Like the things that they do and the activities, they are not in no way influenced by the government. To a situation where the Electoral Commission can actually give a directive and the government follows. And if they fail to do that, it's followed up with them and someone actually gets grilled about it.
Right.
So that's the type of confidence Mwananchi is actually looking for.
Yeah,
And without that, there's still that doubt. How can I go and queue for 1 hour just to register as a voter, and then go and queue for another 2 hours just to vote for a vote that may never count because I don't have passion or I don't have confidence in the system,
Yeah, yeah.
it's nil.
That's an interesting point, that maybe make it an independent body, so not even getting funding from government, because again, that transparency would at least bring back the confidence that the public has in such an institution. But what do you make of that? I'll throw that out to the audience.
I think Kenyans also have a problem of not verifying information. So whatever information we get from our political leaders, we take in, digest it, share it, tweet it, without even verifying the information. I mean, I was in an IBC meeting for faith-based organization, and I was surprised the information they gave us was totally contrary to the information I've been hearing on TV. So I think all these statistics that I see going around, I think we really need to learn to verify information before we believe it and before we share it. So even when it comes to the IBC, when I went for the meeting, there's so many things that were clarified, so let's get the right information.
Fact checking, yeah, there's a comment there. And yeah, Nakia, go ahead before we get...
So the interesting thing about IEBC is that it's the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission.
Yeah.
And I think the influence that we've seen with government interference should be worrying. I do believe that IEBC wants to be independent, and they want to have the confidence of the people. Right. And I do believe that they're working incredibly hard to gain the confidence of the people. But when you have a parliament that's able to make rules at the last minute, last October, they just made a new rule, right? Yeah. So when you have a parliament that's, in a way, I'm probably trying to do the best, but still interfering in the way that the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission works, right, that becomes problematic. Yeah. And that causes people not to trust and to believe in the commission in of itself. Right. And the new commissioners, I think that they have a really, really hard job that they've taken on. It is not a glamorous seat, and they're taking it at such a late time in the game where we only have 8 months left, basically, right, and less than that, and counting down. Right. So I think that for it to really be independent, it has to be, as Vincent mentioned, independent of finances. It can't be a finance line on the government budget. It just can't be. It has to be independent in the way that it functions, and the way that it's funded, and the way that it's led. And right now, that's called into question.
Yeah. A comment here?
I would want to just take back on the 26%. I do not know, but I believe that the media has got a lot of good play in this, because depending on what we hear, I think we eat, sleep, drink what media says sometimes. And so if they just come and front up a face that is not truth, like what she said, and just use information that is not verified, what the guy at the end of the stick on the other side of that TV sees and hears from media, they take it for truth. So it doesn't matter if we have an independent or biased system. I think our media needs to help us move from where we have come from to somewhere different by giving us right information and reporting it as it is without bias on each.
And you raised a very important player, the media, when it comes to influencing how we vote and who we vote for. One day I'll throw this to you. What do you make of our performance? Because I'm in the media. Be nice.
I think the Kenyan media tends to stick at he said, she said. And they are just like the rest of Kenyans, they're just reporting at the surface, but not really digging deep down inside and asking, if Jubilee says they're going to do this, what does this mean? I mean, like I said, even me, I'm a voter, I should have looked at the manifesto. When you look at the manifesto, it's so surprising that half the things they said they would do, they are doing, but unfortunately, I don't think it's what the country needed. And I think that, those kinds of questions of digging deeper, unfortunately, the media don't go down to that. And again, sorry, I'm an educator and I'm going to go back to education. You know how many media people take history, political science, how many study these subjects so that they can understand what is going on politically. I always get surprised when they report things at the surface and then you just need to read New Times Rwanda or a paper in Tanzania and you discover actually there was another side to the story. Didn't the media pick this up? So I think we are still going at the he said, she said, probably because it's sensational. and probably because that's how the media makes money, by attracting viewers. So I think we also need to talk about our public broadcaster, because they're paid by our money, and I think they should be the sort of give some balance that would make the private medias sort of realize that they can't just be too sensational, because our public broadcaster will be more balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to comment on that, because when you look at the United States, now you see that Trump, his presidency, is really waging a war against the media, right? And what they're doing and what they're saying and how they're reporting. Trump did not have as many people as he boasted, nor did his press secretary boasted that he had at his inauguration. His first presser, the press secretary came out and said, it's a lie, the media lied, we had more than enough people, and then they showed pictures of Barack Obama's 2008 inauguration, which I thought was quite hilarious, right? But when you look at Kenya and the way that the media is often treated, right? Because they can be shut down by the government. So I think that there are particular constraints even on the media and the way that they report. And they have to themselves walk on eggs. And they're very, I think, brave people that go out and do the reporting and do the investigative stories. But they're still scared at the end. We just saw, journalists a couple of months ago get arrested for doing that same thing. So I think that they're really stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of reporting. In terms of digging deep, I think I was really impressed. I can't remember whether it was the Standard or the Nation, probably was the Nation, that reported, that did a dig deep on the NYS scandal. And they really went in and were able to kind of pinpoint where the money went, how it went, who it went to. And I thought that was impressive and incredibly brave, because if you have an environment where people are getting fired and harassed and arrested, and I think that it's a really kind of murky environment to be in. So I happen to think a little bit differently about that, and kind of feel bad for the media, and especially the media as it relates to Kenya and the United States.
And dangerous, because you think that dissenting voices do not have room to express their views. There was a comment here.
Now, politicians think of next election, and leaders think of the next generation. And when you look at what is happening, we don't have any leaders. Because the people who are aspirants, they are thinking of followership. And I'm thinking that before anyone decides to get and ask for votes, people need first to be taught what leadership is. It's about serving the people. And us as voters, we need to stop that picky ponky affair, if you understand what I mean. Because we know that this person we are voting for, we are recycling a leader who has been unable to do what he was expected to do in the past. Right. So what miracle do we expect from him? So us as individuals, we need to ask ourselves, can we also come bring forth our own leaders, rather than waiting for people to recycle themselves?
Good point. The comment here.
Like we're all agreeing, like, kind of tired of the leaders, the politicians we have right now. So we want a new fresh of politicians to come in. But how, considering this, is it very hard for a new politician to come into the field? We know there's these big weight stuff. They have already got their strongholds, right. And sometimes it gets ugly. We know how the political arena gets ugly. Like, I'm terrified. I want to fight for MCA, but I'm not supported by that big wit of that community, so I might even get killed or something. So how about we find a way to make me feel safe? I can vie for any position. Even I'm 21 years, I can even go for the MP of my constituency. So how about we make our young aspiring politicians feel safe for them to vie? I think if we do that, we'll make a very good progress for bringing up new politicians. Thank you.
I actually like to comment on that. You need an inspirational politician, someone who's going to inspire you to move to the polls, to stand in line, to be there, and to believe in his or her, speech or what they're going to do, and for them to get into office and act on it. In 2008, the difference with Barack Obama is that he was inspirational. We never saw in the United States as many people vote and register to vote than we did in 2008. We had the most first-time voters in history, and I probably, you know, as it continues, we didn't have very many voters this time around, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But the point is that what Barack Obama did in 2008 was he inspired, you know, a whole generation of people to come out, not only inspire them to register to vote, but inspire them to become involved in the same thing that you saw post-inauguration day with women that came out to vote. The majority of them were youth that were coming out, and millennials that were coming out to vote. Black Lives Matter, the same thing. They're millennials, those same millennials that voted for Barack Obama in 2008 that are now taking up action. There was something that he inspired, and perhaps that's what you're saying, that's what you're looking for, someone who can come out and inspire you, and not only inspire you, but get into office and do what they say they're gonna do. And in terms of your comment, you know, there was the new law that, I'm sorry, but there was the new law that just passed that said that you have to make a decision to be in a political party by a certain date, right? And so for me, that was incredibly powerful and empowering for even the MPs, the MCAs, and the senators that want to run. So with my company, what I said, and I've said it over and over and over again, is that the grassroots movement, if you really want to see change, it has to happen through the grassroots movement. You can't look to these big parties to make change. If you want change, you have to do what Barack Obama did in 2008. You have to get out there and knock on doors. You have to shake everyone's hand. You have to get out your literature. You have to get on Facebook, and you have to do it over and over and over again. And so there's no quick answer. There's no shortcuts. If you want change, there's no shortcuts for that.
Have a strong ground game as Obama did. Yes, there's a comment there.
Vincent, no, unfortunately, the last election, I think we had like 60% of leaders being fresh and new. And when I hear the youth very openly come forth and say they need to be given position, I remember a survey that was done not too long ago where they said that they want to get rich quick. And the question that I have therefore is, just like we have seen the current looting that is happening in the offices, what will they do differently if they're already ascribing to the same values that the older generation is ascribing to? I think what we need is a system that weeds out the corrupt ones, in the sense that when you do something, even before your case is sorted out in court, we know that you cannot be able to stand again. So the system itself needs to be self-checking and weeding out as they come, as they go. Otherwise, the youth will come, they will loot, they will go back, they will come in next time, and we will not have a solution.
I agree.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. One day you want to
The
make a comment?
NYS looters were young. Many of them were young. Yeah, I think the problem is our values, and I'm thinking of what you're saying. You know, these guys steal and then they come to church and give money for Harambe. You know, really, can we? My fantasy is that one day a politician will go in front of a church and everyone stands and either turns their back or walks out. Just that. We're not even asking stones. We are not asking placards or hakietu. Just people say quietly, see you, see me next Sunday, but I'm not going to listen to this. I wish we would do simple protests like that rather than wait for Boni to come and call us to Uhuru Park. We can do things like that, and at least me, I've said, the next time a politician stands in front of me, I'm leaving. I'm not listening. Because you can't loot my taxes and then I stand and smile with you. No. I'm done.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think on that note, we have to bring it to a close. I see so many hands up. We'll probably have to do this after the show, but thank you to my panel. Thank you to my audience. Clearly, a lot more needs to be done. The voter registration is still going on. And I think as you're thinking about that, if you haven't registered yet, think about the leaders that you're going to put in office. Think about what your vote means. And making your vote count doesn't mean just going to the ballot and ticking a box. It also means keeping them accountable after they've been elected in. You have a job to do for the next 5 years as they do. Thank you for watching. I'm Victoria Rubadiri. Thank you to Crown Plaza for hosting us. Let's do this again next week. Keep the conversation going on social media, #Victoria's Lounge. We always love to hear from you. Have a wonderful evening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mic check. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. I'm good. Okay, Nikia, we just need to get your levels.
Okay.